Crude oil theft in Nigeria. Who is stealing Nigeria's crude oil? Who? Who has the mind, the effrontery, the capacity to steal Nigeria's crude oil? Who? Is it even possible to steal Nigeria's crude oil? If it is, who are we to blame? Is it possible to catch those people stealing Nigeria's crude oil? In this video, we will look at the ugly truth, the untold ugly truth about crude oil thefts in Nigeria, with a view to exposing whether it is real or whether it is not real and who is responsible. By the end of this video, you will know for sure the answers to these questions. Crude oil theft in Nigeria, is it real? Is it even possible? For us to answer these questions, we need to go back to the basics. We need to explore the entire process of crude oil exploration from the ground to the point where they are loaded into ships or oil tankers or oil vessels, whichever you choose to call them. We look at that process. We look at all the activities involved. Then we will answer the question, is it possible to steal Nigeria's crude oil? And who is responsible if it should happen? We are told that OPEC quota for Nigeria is about 2.2 million, 2.5 million barrels per day. That's the quota. But as of today, what is the amount of crude oil that we are able to pump out and put into OPEC's official platform? We are told 1.6 million barrels per day, sometimes 1.2 million barrels per day, sometimes 1.3 million barrels per day, which means that up to 1 million barrels per day of Nigeria's crude oil is stolen on a daily basis. 1 million barrels of crude oil, Nigeria's crude oil, stolen per day. If 1 barrel is $70 per barrel, 1 million barrels is $70 million. $70 million stolen from Nigeria every day. How is this possible? Because of the financial implications for you and I, because it affects the revenue of government. And then, of course, if it affects revenue of government, of course, it will affect the provision of services, provision of security, provision of welfare for you and me. It will affect the price of petrol for you and for me. We need to ask this critical question: who is stealing our crude oil? We are told that it is the handiwork of oil bunkerers, those who do fire in the Niger Delta. You know, those local refineries. They say they are unhealthy, they are not standard. In fact, the other day, Wike led a team of soldiers and NSCDC officials to destroy some of those local refineries. And they are blamed for the crude oil theft. Is it possible that it is these local bunkerers that are responsible for the crude oil theft in Nigeria? Let us answer this question by analyzing the whole process. So, Nigeria's crude oil is in the ground or under the ground in Nigerian soil, or 250 nautical miles into the ocean, talking about Nigeria's exclusive economic zone according to international law. So anything under the water, 250 nautical miles into the ocean, is still Nigerian territory. The oil still belongs to Nigeria. So that will be offshore if it is in the ocean, but it will be onshore if it is on Nigerian soil. But we don't know where this crude oil is. We don't know how to get it out of the ground. So what do? NNPC, that we have empowered by as a result of the Petroleum Industry Act, that's the PIA, now goes to look for partners that will help it to extract the crude oil from the ground. First of all, determine where the crude oil is. And so NNPC goes out in search of people we call IOCs, International Oil Companies, the likes of Shell, Ajib, Chevron, and so on. You give me some names. So NNPC finds them and they respond. They tell NNPC, yes, we can do it. We have the financial muscles. We have billions of dollars, if not trillions. We have the technology. We have the wherewithal. We can do it. Just let us sign a partnership. That partnership will agree on a percentage. You don't have to pay us in cash. We have all the cash. We as international oil companies, what we just need is your crude oil. So, but since you also need the money from the crude oil, we'll do a joint venture partnership. You can take 70%, we'll take 30%, but ours is to take the crude oil from the ground, and then once we take it out, we share it on a percentage, 70-30. Do you agree? And NNPC says yes. So they shake hands. And that means you have yourself a JV partnership arrangement. To do what? To get the crude oil from the ground. So, having reached that agreement, the IOCs get to work. They set up their oil rigs. They drill the oil and get it out of the ground. But on top of each oil rigs, you have what you call the oil heads, to which you have the meters that measures the amount of crude oils that come out. And from there, they now have a responsibility to either do one of two things. Pump that crude oil either to NNPC storage or pump it to one of 27 loading terminals. Those loading terminals are where the oil is pumped into ships using pipes. So there's a network of pipes from the wellheads or drilling rigs across the whole of the Niger Delta, onshore and offshore. A network of pipes. Who set up this network of pipes? The IOCs, Shell, Chevron. In fact, majority of these network of pipes are owned by Shell. Others are owned by some other IOCs. So, they pump the crude oil from the ground through the oil rigs. They go through the wellheads into pipes, network of pipes, directs the crude into the loading terminals, from where they are loaded into ships. Now, having known this, you now ask yourself the question, how is it possible that Nigeria's crude oil can be stolen? Because for you to do significant crude oil theft, you need big oil tankers. You need big oil tankers. It is not the stuff of oil bunkers in the Niger Delta. Those ones buried still maybe 1,000, 100, 200 barrels of crude oil. We are talking millions. You need tankers. And it's not stuff that you can steal with tankers, with tired tankers. It's not stuff that you can put on lorries, on trucks. It's stuff that you put on oil vessels. And these oil vessels can only get access to this pipe through the loading terminals. And who has access to these loading terminals? The NNPC, the IOCs, and of course, they have the security services provided by the Nigerian Navy, the Nigerian Army, and NSCDC. But then you say, there are only 27 loading ports. In fact, right now they said not all the 27 loading terminals are working. They say maybe it's only about 12 or 13 that are working. That's what they tell us right now. But I don't believe it. I believe the other 13 loading terminals, they're still being used to steal our crude oil. But that cannot happen without the knowledge of NNPC, Mele Kyari, without the knowledge of the IOCs, without the knowledge of Nigerian Navy, Nigerian Army, NFCDC, and of course, ultimately, without the knowledge of the petroleum minister. Wait a minute. That happens to also be the president of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So it is not possible for crude oil to be stolen in Nigeria without the knowledge of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I'll explain something in a short while that will make it clearer for you, because some people might still be asking questions right now that, oh, what about if they drill the pipes, bust the pipes at certain locations? Okay. Do you know that NNPC has billions of naira worth of software and hardware devices that monitors the flow of crude oil from the wellheads through the network of pipes to the loading terminals? Do you know that they do? They have that. Do you know they even have satellite solutions that monitor the movement of ships that come to berth at the loading terminal, whether onshore or offshore? Do you know that NNPC has that technology? They do. So if Nigeria has the OPEC quota of 2.5 million barrels per day, and they are only doing 1.5 million barrels per day, officially according to what they declare, something fishy is going on. Remember, I told you that two things. One, the NNPC is like a country on its own. Only the group CEO of NNPC and the people within NNPC know what really goes on within NNPC. The only person outside of the NNPC who has the capacity to know but may not necessarily know in depth is the Minister of Petroleum, who happens to also be the President of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. That's the only person. NNPC is like a sovereign country, particularly with the powers that we have given it with the PIA. And then another thing, the second one, NNPC has the capacity, and they do from time to time, sell Nigeria's crude oil in the black market, international black market. Now, how does this work? How does this tie into the missing OPEC quota crude oil that we are told we are not able to meet, but that I believe that we always meet? How does that tie into it? So OPEC gives us 2.5 million barrels per day crude oil quota. And the reason they do it is to stabilize the price of crude oil per barrel in the international market. If it is too much, the price will drop. OPEC countries don't want that. If it is too small, the price will go up. The buyers don't want that. So they always bargain for a middle of the road arrangement. So that's why they give quota. The implication of that, and this is why it is important, this is why it is very, very likely that there's a connection between what is going on in NNPC and the missing crude oil. This is how we will determine who is really responsible for stealing Nigeria's crude. If OPEC gives you 2.5 million barrels per day quota and you don't meet it consistently, what happens is the output of crude oil in the international market drops and the price will go up very quickly. People like the United States of America will call OPEC to a meeting and begin to ask questions. In fact, most times they begin to tell you OPEC should ask their member countries to increase their quota. But OPEC will say, no. If we increase it, the price will drop. That's also not good for us. So what will OPEC do if Nigeria consistently does not meet its quota? OPEC will reduce Nigeria's quota and take the deficit and give it to somebody else so as to maintain international price stability of crude oil. You see where I'm going with this? Have they reduced Nigeria's quota? No. If they have not reduced Nigeria's quota, it means that documentarily Nigeria meets OPEC quota. But on record, we are told Nigeria does not meet OPEC's oil quota. How is this possible? It is possible through selling Nigeria's crude oil in the international black market. Get this in. Let it sink in. Selling Nigeria's crude oil in the international black market. But you ask, oh, if this is possible, how come CBN does not know? How come these people does not know? How come? They can't know, because when they sell this crude oil in the international black market, both the buyer and the seller are obligated to use brokers or agents. So most times this money can be paid into the accounts of the brokers or agents. Or even when it is paid into NNPC's account, it is NNPC's account in international banks, because these monies are paid in dollars. JP Morgan Chase, which international bank do you know? Which international bank do you know? Tell me in the description. These monies are paid into such international banks, and the records are within the control of the NNPC, records that are unknown to any external party. So that way, NNPC can engage in the sale of Nigeria's crude oil in the international black market and come back and tell us that they did not meet OPEC's quota, and come back and tell us that our crude oil was stolen by artisanal small boys, local crude oil bunkerers. So you see, this is the ugly truth about oil theft in Nigeria. If anybody comes to tell you that Nigeria's crude oil is stolen, tell them that with this understanding you have, the NNPC has a lot of questions to answer. Mele Kyari has a lot of questions to answer. I know he came out today and he's saying that he believes in God. He practically said he's a pastor or an imam, he and his friends, and blah, blah, blah. Ask them, they have questions to answer. And ultimately, ask Mr. President. He has a whole lot of questions to answer. Because think about it, from what I just explained, is it possible for the president to say he doesn't know that NNPC can sell and does sell Nigeria's crude in international black market without having to record it officially in OPEC's quota? Does he not know? Is it possible for Nigeria's crude to be stolen without the knowledge of the IOCs? When they sell this crude oil in the black market, it's usually through the partnership, the joint venture partnership. You see, NNPC cannot do it without the IOCs. The IOCs cannot do it without the NNPC. So when they do this international black market crude oil trade of Nigeria's crude, it's in partnership between the NNPC and the IOCs. They do it together. And they benefit. In fact, the rule of thumb is this: 60% discount for the person buying the crude in the black market, 2% for NNPC's brokers, 2% for the IOC's broker or the buyer's brokers. And so they make money, extra money, with their existing investment. They're smiling to the bank. The NNPC officials are smiling to the bank, international banks for that matter. But Nigeria, we're crying and we are groaning under the weight of expensive fuel that we have to pay because of the policies of this administration. So is it possible, I'm asking you now, for Nigeria's crude oil to be stolen by anybody? Are you still in any doubt as to who steals Nigeria's crude oil? Then maybe you have not been watching this video. Have a good night.